and welcome to Conscious Curiosities, where we unlock the wisdom of the universe which lies within us. I'm Maria Luz, your host, a certified hypnotist, astrologer, and psychic medium. In today's episode, I am sharing a presentation that I did for subscribers to my Substack, for paid subscribers. However, I wanted to drop it in here to my podcast, which I had said goodbye for now, maybe a month or so ago. But I think it would be really helpful to all of you listeners and give you maybe a prompt to go over to my Substack if you haven't yet. Um, I provide a couple of different ways to view your sun sign in this episode by season and by element. And I discuss how its impact on you is different from your moon or your ascendant and how that will play into major life decisions. I share about a major life decision for me, which I've talked about in other episodes, getting sober and leaving corporate employment to become a spiritual entrepreneur. So, I will be referring to some slides in this episode. And if you subscribe over on Substack, as a paid subscriber, it's just $5 a month or $50 a year. You would have access to those slides and then the other monthly topics that I'm going to be presenting on. So, with that, I hope you enjoy listening and I hope to see you over on Substack. I'm at Maria Luz O'Rourke, and my Substack's name is Astrology, Alchemy, and Honest Recovery. Thank you so much for your support and for listening. Have a great day.
Good morning, everyone, and happy International Women's Day. I'm Maria Luz, and I run the Substack Astrology, Alchemy, and Honest Recovery. I also have the podcast, Maria Luz's Conscious Curiosities, that I think I'm in the process of merging. So I'm going to go ahead and get going today. Let me share my screen. Today, I'm talking about sun signs and how they can play into making big decisions. And I will use my own experience, I guess you could call it a process, with switching over from being in a corporate environment for my entire working life up until really the beginning of last year, 2024, when I went out on my own to do something else. So I will do a little bit of presentation and maybe intersperse that with some of the story. So first, I wanted to do a little review of your big three. You've probably heard of your big three, and what this refers to are these three features on your birth chart. We have your ascendant, or also called your rising, and that is often subconscious and unconscious. It's how you approach new things. It's also how other people encounter you for the first time, because it is really a filter that you wear and that others see you through. It's often thought to be tied to your soul purpose. It does, because the rising sign changes about every 2 hours versus the sun, which is next, which is in the same sign for about 30 days. The rising is pretty personal, or I guess unique, I would say, from one person to the next, even if you're born on in the same month or even on the same day. So then we get to your sun, which is representative of your vital essence, your ego self, your role in this life. And we'll be spending a lot of time talking about this today. And then your moon is how you are comfortable, how you keep yourself safe, your emotional self, and how you nurture others. And you can download your birth chart for free on a lot of online um, websites or apps. And you just need to have obviously your date of birth and the location, but also the time, because again, as I mentioned, that ascendant rising changes about every 2 hours. So in order to have an accurate birth chart, you'll want to have that time of birth. There are many things we can still read for you as astrologers, even if we don't have that time. So don't let it deter you. Just check in with me or another astrologer about your options. Okay, so the sun and its function. I put a couple of quotes here from Stephen Forrest. He's an astrologer who I adore. He's written several books. He has one on each element, and these are from the Book of Fire. And the first quote is, "The sun represents the basic values to which you must be true if your life is going to make sense to you. It is the common denominator in all your wise decisions." So you can see how it's already playing into my theme. And the second is, if you are true to your natal sun, you'll be glad you're alive. So pretty strong words there about your natal sun. And a few other things to keep in mind about the sun. It is one of two what we call luminaries, and the other is the moon, which is another 1/3 of your big three. So very important as well. It rules the sign of Leo. That's why I put this beautiful picture of a lion, although it's a male lion. It's hard, it's hard to find pictures of lionesses. Anyway, that's that's a story for another day, although it is International Women's Day. I probably should have gone to more effort. So it also rules chakra 3, which is the solar plexus. And even when I say that, I see the color yellow, which is coming up for me here along with the sun. And it is your ego, your will, your conscious drive. And the other thing I will say is that as I was sitting here preparing, I pulled a card from this illustrated herbiary. I'm also an herbalist. And of course, the one that popped up was this perfect image of the sun, and it's a dandelion, and it is perseverance. Okay, so for a little bit of a deeper dive, the house that your sun is in is very important. And when you get your birth chart, you'll see that it's divided into 12 houses. So you'll want to look for the house where your sun is located. It is also greatly affected by the time, the place, and the culture of birth. Other planets in key aspects to the sun in your birth chart can really affect how you express your sun. And then there's something called a progress chart that changes as we change over our lifetime. And the sun in your progress chart reflects changes in how you see yourself. So, one way to think of your sun sign is that it's part of a seasonal family. And I drew this because I couldn't really find a wheel that had all of the features I wanted on it. Um, However, you'll notice on the inside, I have the seasons. So in spring, we have on the outside of the wheel, we have the signs that are associated with that season. And then in the middle here, we have the elements. And I'll show you following the seasonal groupings, I'll show you the groupings by element as well, because that's another way to think about your sun sign. And so in the spring, we have Aries, which is just about to kick off when we have our spring equinox on March 21st. And Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's a fire sign. it is this survival instinct. And so we'll get into a little bit more what the core or essence of each sign is as we go through. And then we go along, Taurus, Gemini, and then we hit summer, which are Cancer, Leo, Virgo, and fall, which are Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and then winter, which are Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. And you'll want to make a note of the element that your sign is in, maybe when you're looking at this chart while I have it up. Because one thing to note is that there will be one season out of the four that does not have your element. For example, I am a fire sign, I'm a Leo, and in the winter, there is no fire. So I always feel a little bit not myself or harder to access my sun signs energy in the winter. So you may notice that as well. And I put the dates when each of these sun sign seasons begin here. And they're not all at, say, midnight exactly on those dates, which is another reason why, if your birth date happens to be on one of these cusp dates, you would want to have the time of birth because there is a specific time of day that the sun actually moves into that sign. Okay, so our spring signs, they are Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. And I put here this key phrase, and that comes from a book called Astrology for Yourself. And it is an excellent workbook style book that is by Douglas Block and Demetra George. Demetra George is one of my all-time favorite astrologers. She is so amazing. And yeah, any books or appearances on videos that you can get your hands on, I encourage you to find her. So it's this key phrase for Aries is my need to be independent and develop self-awareness. And then the second one is from the Stephen Forrest book that I quoted in the beginning, the Book of Fire. And it is let your guiding star be the development of courage, directness, and the right use of force. So as I go through these, you'll want to think about your, again, your sun being related to your essence and your conscious purpose. And when I presented your big three and I spoke about your moon, well, your moon is really closer to you because it is your emotional self. Because of that, it may take a bit longer in your life to actually access your sun. Um, because it takes us a while to actually develop our ego from the time we're a child. There's so many things that we are soaking in and learning, for better or worse, from our environment, that you may and you may still as an adult not feel super connected to the energy of your sun sign, which is all the more reason to get to know it because it really does have so much to do with what you are here to bring to others. I put in the title of this presentation also your presence. It is the presence that we need here. So even if you don't highly identify it, that's something to explore. Why might that be? And for example, I know for women, uh, when we have um, a fire sign as our sun sign, we're often trained or outright told to dampen it, to hide it, because it's just we're called too much, too bold, too direct, um, to taking up too much space, etc. So that could be another reason. And then Aries, that just happens to be ruled by Mars. And then we have Taurus, ruled by Venus. And we have key phrase here. My need to be resourceful, productive, and stable, and let your guiding star be the development of calm, simplicity, and an acceptance of that which arises naturally. Then we have Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. The key phrase is my need to communicate with and learn from others. Let your guiding star be the development of curiosity, open-mindedness, conversation, and a willingness to listen. And then our summer signs. Here we have Cancer. The other thing that I didn't mention is that for each of these seasons, the order is important. So the first one in the season is called a cardinal sign. It initiates that season. So when you have that sign as your sun, you will bring that energy of starting things to any part of your life or your work or your family. You might notice you're the one who's always initiating things. So for the summer signs, Cancer is that sign. And the key phrase here is my need to give and receive emotional, oh, sorry, there's a typo, warmth and security. And let your guiding star be the development of gentleness, nurturance, and an acceptance of human frailty. Then we have Leo, which would be in that scheme of three, the fixed sign. That is when the energy of the summer is getting most concentrated, and Cancer ruled by the moon, and then Leo ruled by the sun. The key phrase is my need to express myself creatively and be appreciated by others. And let your guiding star be the development of forthrightness, creativity, spontaneous self-expression, and a sense of theater. So I will come back to this when I'm telling my story about making a big decision. But first, I'm going to go through these remainder of the signs. So Virgo, the key phrase is my need to analyze, discriminate, and function efficiently. And let your guiding star be the development of service, groundedness, and skill. Virgo is in that scheme of three is the mutable sign because it's going to be transitioning us from summer into fall. It's also ruled by Mercury, similar to Gemini. Then we have our fall signs, and we have Libra, ruled by Venus. This is the cardinal of the fall. Key phrase, my need to cooperate with others and to create balance and harmony in my life. Let your guiding star be the development of negotiation, teamwork, and love. And then we have Scorpio, the fixed sign. This is in traditional astrology, ruled by Mars, and in modern day astrology by Pluto. Key phrase, my need for deep involvements and intense transformations. And let your guiding star be the development of honesty, shadow work, and courageous emotional investigation. Then we have Sagittarius, the fixed sign. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. The key phrase, my need to explore and expand the horizons of my mind and the world. Let your guiding star be the development of faith, belief, commitment, and mind-stretching experience. And I apologize, there's another typo. My Virgo placements are deeply ashamed of me at this time. But I will say when I was typing it, initially this template had a different font that was really hard to read. And I ended up changing it, but I think those typos that's my excuse anyway, are left from when it was that overly decorative font that came with this Canva template. Okay. Then we have our winter signs, and we have Capricorn, which is the cardinal of the winter season. It gets the winter going, and Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. The key phrase, my need for structure, organization, and social accomplishment. Let your guiding star be the development of self-discipline, integrity, and objective accomplishment. And then we have Aquarius, the fixed sign, the concentration of winter. Aquarius in traditional astrology is also ruled by Saturn, and in modern astrology, it's ruled by Uranus. And the key phrase is my need to be innovative, original, and an agent of change. And let your guiding star be the development of individuation, unusual experiences, and escape from social constraint. And then we have Pisces, which is the fixed in this series of three. And it is ruled by, in traditional astrology, by Jupiter, and in modern astrology, by Neptune. The key phrase, my need to commit myself to a dream or ideal and work towards its realization. And let your guiding star be the development of meditation, surrender, and mystical experiences. Okay, so another way that we can group the signs, the sun signs, is to look at them in families by element. And so we have 4 elements. The first I have fire here is Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. So when you're looking at the zodiac wheel, you'll notice that these groupings of 3 that I'll show you for each element, they make a triangle, and that's called a trine. It means that there is an easy flow of energy between those signs. So, for example, if you have, say, like I do, I'm such a Leo talking about myself. I have a Leo sun and an Aries moon. So, and they're both fires. So it's almost as though my emotions, they're Aries, so they're going to be very ignitable. They start themselves, they start fires themselves. And there's this easy flow from my emotions to what I'm doing outwardly. I can barely control myself. I've gotten better, but it's hard. So you may notice that too if you have 2, or God help you if you have all 3 of your big 3 in the same element. So fire is about identity. And I put on each of these some of the key words from, again, from that Block and George book, the workbook, and they separate them out into, they kind of, I can't remember their exact word, but it's almost like a above the bar and below the bar, or above the line or below the line. You may have heard of those phrases where because even when they wrote the book, I think they were trying to avoid positive and negative. Um, However, there are maybe inappropriate expressions, or there might be over expressions of your fire. So that's what's in the below this and on the slide that I'm showing. So just a few, I'll just list a few for each of these, or maybe I'll just read them all because we have time. And some people might just be listening to the audio on the podcast. So for fire, again, identity would be our key word. And then we have some descriptors: radiant, creative, warm, energetic, passionate, daring, courageous, enterprising, self-confident, independent, active, enthusiastic, inspirational, spirited, optimistic. And the kind of below the and, impulsive, impatient, rash, excitable, burns out, pushy, domineering, egocentric, insensitive, fanatical. Okay, and then we come to the air signs. This family is made up of Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And the key for this grouping is social and mental energy. And some of the descriptors: intellectual, abstract, rational, logical, conceptual, communicative, curious, social, alert, objective, impersonal, unbiased, fair, tolerant, observant, clever, versatile, and ungrounded, spacey, verbose, nosy, detached, uncaring, aloof, removed, inconsistent, indecisive, and nervous. And I will also say that the more placements, so not just your big 3, but all of your planets are placed in signs and therefore in elements. So you'll notice that you're probably heavier on 1 or 2 elements. And that will concentrate these energies, these descriptors. So, for example, if you have a lot of air placements, you may find it difficult to actually feel grounded in your body, or maybe to take action because you're spending a lot of your energy in the mental space. And then we have our earth signs, which are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. And this keyword is material. And some of the descriptors are practical, realistic, dependable, trustworthy, deliberate, cautious, grounded, physical, structured, sensuous, patient, persistent, productive, industrious. And maybe when they're overexpressed, risk averse, opportunistic, rigid, materialistic, possessive, narrow minded, immovable, and unchangeable. And I uh, came from a family where both of my parents were Taurus sons. And here I am, this fire child. I did not understand what was taking them so damn long to do anything, to get out the door, to like come pick me up from soccer. So anyway, you might notice like if you happen to know your parents or your siblings, at least their sun signs are pretty easy to find. You may notice that the astrology explains a little bit of the dynamic that you experienced. And then we come to water, and these signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. These waters family has to do with emotional and soul. And the descriptors are nurturing, providing, protecting, emotional, sensitive, compassionate, healing, receptive, bonding, dissolving, impressionable, flowing, yielding, psychic, and hidden. And the below the line, maybe when they're overexpressed or inappropriately used, overprotective, clingy, over emotional, fearful, undefined, lacks ego strength, dependent, martyred, secretive, and covert. And I will stop sharing now because I am at the end of my presentation. And what I will do now is, I believe, just share my birth chart because then I can explain a little bit about, yeah, this will allow me to annotate. I can explain a little bit about my decision-making process. Okay, so let me choose this annotation tool. So if you are able to get a hold of your birth chart, you just get so much information. Just happy dance for you. So you'll notice that at the 9 o'clock position, there is a glyph or, a symbol, and it will also have these numbers here, the degrees. Um, not most of you will not begin with 0 degrees or Scorpio, but that just happens to be my rising. It begins at 0. So that is my rising or my ascendant. Um, Sometimes the definition of ascendant includes what's in this, what we call the first house, and maybe even some of these planets that are super close to your ascendant, like I have Jupiter, for example, very, very close to my ascendant. It's only 5 degrees away. So that makes me just a very, I guess, Jupiterian, you might say, person. As well, because it is your ascendant, as I mentioned, it's how you approach new people, places, situations. It's how people see you. Um, and it has to do with your soul purpose. So it's worth investigating, not just your rising sign, but maybe any planets that are near there or in your first house. So since I'm going to be talking about decision making, and I'll explain mine in more detail so that we can see how it played out. So, as I mentioned, I'm a Jupiterian person. What that means is I tend to just go big and be very optimistic about scenarios. I guess, one example would be I I was a runner most of my life, except when I was uh, I would say probably in Hmm. Well, no, I guess most of my life, but I got really serious about it when I was in my late 20s and I started doing marathons. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to run Boston, and so I ended up running the Boston, qualifying and running the Boston 5 times. Then that wasn't enough. So I wanted to run ultra marathons. So I started running all of these ultra marathons, which are, in the mountains and they're up to, 100 miles or more. Um, and and it didn't really occur to me that, oh, maybe that's like too big of a thing to do. Um, it can also overinflate my idea of my abilities. Or just life itself that I could handle myself in situations. However, the other part of that is I have Neptune in my first house. And Neptune is related to Pisces. It can be very idealistic, similar to Jupiter. So they kind of have this synergy going on. However, Neptune can also become delusional, into, thinking for me that would play out as just thinking that I would have kind of delusions about situations I was in or other people. And I wouldn't say like drug delusions, but just kind of fairy tale. I would kind of fall into this thinking of my romantic partner as the Prince Charming, or that my life should be like that, like a movie or something. So I had that going on. And then there's this Scorpio energy, which is getting in deep, getting to the bottom of things psychologically, wanting the answers, really the deep answers, and wanting transformation. Always this underlying seeking of shedding layers and seeking this deep transformation. So most Scorpio risings just do not like to engage in small talk. It's not how we approach new situations at all. We would rather just be very observant. And I almost say rather, but it's not really a conscious choice. It is our default. It's our instinct approach. Okay, so that is a little bit about this ascendant here, also called the rising. Um, okay, now what I'll do is go on to the moon, which is over here. Now, my moon is in Aries and it's in the sixth house. It's also, you'll notice other planets next to it, which play into its energy, but I'm not going to go into that for the sake of today because it's a little bit too in the weeds for today's topic. But the Aries moon is one, if you think back to what I presented about if your sun sign is in Aries, it is very much about drive and survival and competition, I will say, just wants to be first. And it can be very impulsive. It can be reckless. And when it is your emotional self, it just feels as if you have no space at all from your emotions. They just kind of take you over the minute they drop in. And so the other thing to note here is that it's in the sixth house. So this is the first house, as I mentioned, that has to do with yourself. And then we would go around here. second, third, fourth. And they each have associations that go with the houses in terms of like areas of life or experience or self or others. And the sixth house is about your daily activities and habits and routine and tasks and about service and mentoring. Um, it is associated with the sign of Virgo. So that means that to be comfortable, I will need some daily habits that feed my, fire Aries to be comfortable and to protect myself. Um, and so for me, that looked like the daily running, just doing something super active to use up that energy every day. Um, and uh, the other thing would be just I kind of I do have a lot of energy. I mean, I wake up and I'm just ready to like shoot out of bed. So there is that. And so when I was in a state of crisis and I didn't understand what was happening, but this was back I guess it started maybe around 2018, yeah, even sooner. But I was using alcohol to cope with everything, to numb with everything. Um, and I didn't know what was going on with myself, but essentially I was fueling this fire with making more fire with the alcohol. And it would cause these emotional outbursts with the people, my sixth house people, my day-to-day, people I who I loved the most, or I guess who maybe were had access to me maybe the most, I will say. So for me, that would look like my boyfriend at the time. I would have these outbursts, and often just I would get triggered, but I didn't know I was being triggered, or to what I was being triggered. And then, so anyway, what happened eventually is I couldn't exercise anymore. I could barely get out of bed around the 2020 time frame. So I couldn't do those things. So no way was I exercising or anything. I became very watery, became very bloated. Um, so that if I had known astrology at that time, or if I would have sought help, which is another thing that Aries moons are not very good at, is seeking help, because they're used to doing everything by themselves. I probably would have figured out that something was not right with me. I started having these panic attacks, and again, I didn't know what they were, but I would lose the ability to move, really. I remember just sitting there not being able to lift my arms and then feeling like I was dying. Um, so yeah, so anyway, all of this was pushing me to get to a point where I had to decide. So your moon, um, because it's so close to you, it's so close to your emotions, which are tied to your body, where you've stored all of your traumas from childhood and before and past lives. It is not especially when it's not resourced, it's not necessarily the best place to look to for decision making because it's so immediate. And especially when you're in crisis, it's in that self-protective mode, as mine was very much becoming in that freeze and fawn mode. So this brings me to the sun. And here's my sun in Leo. Um, and again, you'll notice it is very close to some other planets. Um, for this scenario, I will just point out that it is close to Mars in Leo. And Mars rules Aries. So again, all the more it makes for this very kind of fiery energy that I didn't understand. And I felt my entire life that I had to go the opposite way and tamp it down. Um, I was also born into uh, this kind of biracial identity that didn't, at the time when I was growing up, was very othered. I didn't have a Filipino side, even though my mom was Filipino, because she was the first one. She didn't speak Tagalog to us. I had four older siblings who were all white because my dad's first wife, who passed away, was white. And so there was a lot of just reasons why I wanted to just blend in. But I couldn't even understand what I was meant to blend into because it was so dang confusing, which is another component of Neptune in the first house, confusion, confusion of the self, and this Jupiter amplifying it in Scorpio, a very psychological based confusion. Um, so there was that as well. So I am one of those people who, my son took a very long time to just come to the surface because of this whole first house um, confusion, cloudiness. There was a lot of just trauma and secrets and things in my family of origin that felt I felt very intensely and I was confused about. Now I know I am psychic and I was likely just picking up on everybody's what they were thinking and and feeling and past people picking that up as well. So anyway, my son here in Leo, it's also in the 10th house. Okay, so the 10th house is going to be about career and vocation and legacy and self-mastery. It's naturally associated with Capricorn, um, and about time. And so I was superficially, a lot of my life had taken place in the 10th house. I was the primary earner for my family, so I had to really focus on career, having three kids, to make sure that I had enough to provide for them and for their futures. And um, and also, Leo has to do with leadership. So sometimes you cannot make this up. But I actually went to get my master's in organizational leadership. And the organizational part would be this 11th house, Pluto and Mercury in Virgo. And and so I, again, superficially, I was playing out some of these 10th house things, but if you'll remember back to the significations of Leo, Sun, and also fire, it's a lot about creative self-expression. Um, and in order to do that, you need to be authentic, you need to be yourself. And I didn't, after all of that numbing with the alcohol, the trying to blend in, I didn't even know what I was blending into. All of the traumas. That finally came to a head when I couldn't take having to drink every day anymore. I could not take it. And so I decided at November 4th, 2022, my older son and his partner at the time, they came over and they helped me. They were so kind. And I will never, yeah, I'll just never forget that. And I I didn't go to rehab or anything. True to my Aries moon, I did it myself. I wish, I had been able to accept more help and maybe get, a supervised detox, but I had a horrible like detox at home with lots of um uh auditory hallucinations and seeing things and nightmares and awful heart palpitations, sweating, all of that stuff. But I I wanted to keep going. Like I knew I didn't want that life for me. I wanted to be free. So from that time, I started just getting to know myself because, again, I'd been living on this very superficial level from a survival, instinct, and that wasn't authentic. So I had started to have these little ideas about writing, and then I learned astrology, and then I started having just in meditation or dreams or other psychics would bring up plants. And so I knew herbalism would have something to do with that. Um, but I had to rely on my sun sign to really push me um, out of that survival mode. Moon can go into survival mode. And for me, that looked like kind of clinging to my status or my title or my ability to earn money, those kind of old 10th house associations of vocation and leadership and success. So instead, I had to decide I'm okay with me being me. It doesn't matter if anyone agrees. I really want to express my heart, and I believe that others will feel seen. That's another part of Leo. It's not an expression of self just for attention or glory. They shine the light on themselves so that that light shines on others who maybe aren't quite ready yet to come out of the shadows because, again, they might still be back in survival mode. Um, and so that is a very huge part of it. Um, I also just had to let things evolve over time. Leo is a fixed sign, so it's going to persevere, even when the Aries part may have been very impatient, wanting things to happen already. I had to really rely on my fixed sign. Scorpio is also a fixed sign, a water sign, able to get through the healing that I was also going through. Neptune also healing. I also have Chiron here, conjunct my moon. Chiron is about healing. Um, so what that might look like for you is exploring your chart, and you may need to purposely get uncomfortable and really look to your sun sign and what that is telling you about the essence of yourself. Um, and maybe pulling that all together with at least with your big three to determine maybe from a zoomed out perspective rather than an immediate perspective what is going to really sustain or enhance my purpose in life via this decision. And for me, you see me here now. I'm no longer with my corporate job, even though I could have survived. Yes, I could have kind of hid maybe or not explored myself or what I wanted to express. Um, However, I probably would have gotten to the end of my life or the other side, um, and not felt like I did the most I could be to give my life purpose, some meaning and value for others, for the collective. So that will bring me to the end of my presentation. And oops, let me erase all of these guys here. Um, do. Okay, and while I'm doing this, for those of you catching the replay or on my podcast, I would love to have you, oopsies, let me close that. I would love to have you join me over on Substack. Oh, I have one more slide. The sun is our core. And What I put here is maybe we can think of the universe as a grand puzzle over time, space, and dimension. And perhaps each of us is that too. So if we are true to our core, our sun, it will help to pull the rest of the puzzle together rather than make it incomplete or have to accommodate the missing piece. So that's what I was referring to about once I was able to really allow my son to be expressed, I felt like I was clicking into my place in the universe. Okay, so I have in the last slide, just thank you all for catching this wherever and whenever and however you're catching it. Please visit my Substack. I love that place. I've met so many other amazing people there. So I am at Maria Luz O'Rourke. My Substack is Astrology, Alchemy, and Honest Recovery. I even have a special code for 25% off if you book by April 15th. And I would be happy to do a astrology reading. Or I also do a combination of psychic mediumship and astrology. If you are coming up on a bigger decision in your life that you would like maybe a different perspective on. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording and you have a wonderful day. Bye bye.